Okay. Well, hello everybody. Good morning and welcome to the Agile PDM Roundtable. Our roundtable is a collaboration between people from Agile PDX and the Portland PMI chapter that brings together project managers, scrum masters, and other agilists to share, discuss, and learn how Agile principles and practices can be applied to work that people do at all levels of an organization. The roundtable seeks to build connections between Agile and project management communities, and we strive to create an inclusive environment for people with curious and open minds. Through our partnership with Agile PDX, we are able to provide these video conferencing services and a platform for reaching out to the Agile community in Portland. All of that is made possible by the Agile PDX community and their sponsors, including Platinum sponsor ProFocus Technologies. Thank you, ProFocus, for your continued support of Agile PDX. You can learn more about the sponsors of Agile PDX at agilepdx.org/sponsorship. Now, for those of you who hold credentials that require continuing education credits, Agile PDX offers a tool that supports the auditing of professional development units, PDUs to PMI, and Scrum educational units, SEUs to the Scrum Alliance. In the next 24 hours, simply visit the bit.ly URL that I'll post in the chat for today's video conference and provide some basic information about yourself. Volunteers at Agile PDX will report your participation to the certification granting organization for auditing purposes. You'll still need to claim your individual continuing education credit units, but Agile PDX will report that you attended today, again for auditing purposes. So today we have a couple of special guests, and Brian, can you tell us a little bit more about them?
Sure, absolutely. Welcome, everybody. And if it looks like I'm half asleep, I am. Today's Agile PM Roundtable, we're very pleased to welcome two very special guests, Craig Carrington and Vikram Shevde. Craig's a certified expert Agile coach serving at Accenture SolutionsIQ since 2013. In recent years, he's been particularly interested in studying topics such as adult cognitive development, organizational development stages, systems thinking, and social justice. Vikram Shevde, previous speaker here, popular previous speaker here, I might add, is a seasoned Agile practitioner, coach, and digital product development enthusiast who loves helping organizations delight their customers and engage in their employees using Agile ways of working. He has a deep background in software engineering, project program management, and he's been part of the Agile transformation at multiple Fortune 500 firms. He currently works with Slalom, helping organizations as an Agile coach. Both Craig and Vikram hold several coaching and Agile certifications. Today, Vikram and Craig will share their thoughts on Agile coaching. They'll set the stage with a 20 to 25-minute presentation, which will follow with a Q&A session, group Q&A session. Please note there are a number of us on the call, and we request that you ask your questions through the Zoom chat feature. David and I will monitor the chat, and we'll call you to ask your question. Please unmute your microphone to indicate that you'd like to participate in the discussion. And we've used similar formats in the past. It's worked pretty well. We just ask that you mute your mic when you're not talking. And also, just please bear with us because this is obviously an Agile. We continue to adapt and change as we go. Vikram and Craig have asked we record today's session, I think as David mentioned earlier. With their permission, we will make the recording available to confirm registrants and to the general community via the Agile PDX Slack and YouTube channel. We plan on recording the entire event, including the Q&A. So if you have concerns or questions, please feel free to use the chat during the meeting to discuss them with David or myself. You can follow up with us after today's session as well. After the discussion with Craig and Vikram, we'll set aside a few minutes towards the 8 o'clock hour for any announcements that people might have. I think there's the Agile Alliance seminar happening today for the anniversary of the Scrum Guide, for instance.
That's right. It's the 20th anniversary of, well, no, of the
Agile
Manifesto.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Got it wrong. Then we'll break shortly before 8, so we can transition to whatever you're going to be doing next in your day. First, a little bit more about today's topic. You might ask, what is Agile coaching and what is the professional coaching? How are they related, and what does developing your coaching skills benefit Agile project management? We'll explore these questions together by looking at a framework for understanding Agile coaching from Agile Coaching Institute, as well as looking at professional coaching from perspective of the International Coaching Federation. And now, without further ado, I'd like to turn the floor over to Craig and Vikram to begin the discussion about the manipulation and influence. How to tell the difference and what to do about it. I'm sorry, that's not the.
Oh, sorry, I didn't update that part.
Agile coaching. Talk about Agile coaching and walk us through the framework that they're going to present. Vikram, Craig.
Yes, thank you. Could I ask David to, would you be able to enable me to
Yes, of
share my
course.
screen?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I will work on that in the background while Vikram and we can explain to you what the framework is that we're about to display. Vikram, do you want to kind of start introducing that as I work to get the screen sharing?
And Craig, you should be enabled now.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. So what you see on the screen now is the Agile Coaching Competency Framework by the Agile Coaching Institute. This is the Agile Coaching Institute is the premier Agile coaching related institution. Somebody once explained to me that just like the PMI and PMBOK, some could say that the Agile Coaching Institute is that kind of a body for Agile coaches, right? And this model was created and popularized by them. Lisa Atkins is one of their co-founders.
Yes, Michael Spade and others, yes.
Exactly, yeah. And these are very well-known names in the Agile coaching community. This diagram is often called the X-Wing diagram. For the Star Wars fans in us, you could probably see the reference. And it kind of shows you all like what are the different competencies when you talk about Agile coaching. You'll notice the top center talks about being Agile lean practitioners, which is all about being a practitioner using lean Agile ways of working. But that is not all that is part of being an Agile coach. You'll notice that on the right X, there are the competencies of professional coaching and facilitating, which are significantly key to being an Agile coach. And in fact, if you look at professional coaching, it is all about coaching in the real life. It has nothing to do with being an Agilist or the manifesto. Can be used in all walks of life. Facilitation is about being impartial and facilitating. And then on the left, you'll see the competencies of teaching and mentoring, which have their own kind of lens when you look at it, right? Teaching is when you are imbibing knowledge, distributing knowledge to others. Mentoring is a different stance. And then at the bottom, you will see like some key areas of mastery. So the theory here being that as an Agile coach, you will likely need to do all of this, but to do all of this well is probably a tall order. So this is where there are some kind of focus areas. You could be a technical focused coach where you're talking about technical practices like extreme programming, paired programming used in the Agile world. You could be a transformation coach specializing in transformations, or you could look at the business, and this is all about like how do you improve your business returns, product development, etc. When I was first introduced to this model, it kind of helped me look and see, okay, you know what? There's much more to this than I understood. And now it's helping me actually focus personally on areas of interest that are key to me and where I think I can add value. So for example, I work with some other fellow coaches who are very interested in the professional coaching angle and the transformation angle. On the other hand, I myself, I'm very interested in the business aspect of it and the business product management, etc. So I'll stop there. Craig, anything to add? Anything I missed? Anything to correct?
Well, so I will point out that all four of the left and the right sides, all four of those quadrants are generic skills that you can use outside of Agile coaching, outside of project management coaching. They are skills that can be applied in many different disciplines, many different areas. And teaching is about taking a topic that you choose or that those you are teaching chooses, and you share that expertise. Mentoring is more of a one-on-one or small group where they are asking you for some guidance, some advice, some passing on of some knowledge, maybe to solve a particular problem that they're facing. And so you would share mentoring advice. And contrast that with the other side, the coaching and facilitating. You are having the others that you are facilitating and coaching, they own the agenda, they own the topic. And so you take a neutral stance for both coaching and facilitating, so that when you're facilitating, you might be facilitating a meeting and it's not you driving to the goals and outcomes that you want personally. It's you asking the group, what are your goals? What do you want out of this meeting? What problem are you trying to solve? And then using facilitation techniques so that they discover the solutions, they reach the answers. So that's a key distinction between the two. And hopefully as that distinction starts to emerge, you'll start to notice that it's the combination of all of these 4 quadrants of skill sets that enable the Agile coaching competency framework generally.
Great call out, Craig. I think when I started learning more about Agile coaching and coaching in general, that was one of the things that kind of became very apparent to me, because I have lived in the consulting world for a while. I've been a project manager in the past. I used to come to the meeting with an agenda. I used to come to the coaching sessions saying that this is what we need to talk about. But then as I learned more and more, that's when I kind of realized that I need to let go. It's the coachee. When I'm maintaining that stance of coaching and facilitating, it's the coachee or the team that owns the agenda. I'm neutral. It's not what I think, it's what they want to get out of it.
Yes, and a lot of the experience that you gain when you start practicing in these 4 quadrants is learning to recognize which skill set you should be pulling in the moment. And one of the metaphors that we like to use as Agile coaches is that we put on different hats. And it's advantageous to be explicit about that and say, we started this conversation and I was holding the professional coaching stance, but with your permission, I would like to shift to a mentoring stance and give you some advice. And making that explicit helps the person or group that you're coaching stay in control. It gives them an opportunity to decide, no, actually, I want you to stick with me and not give me the answer because I see it's valuable for you to continue to coach me. So it gives them that opportunity to have a choice. So this next slide does give a little more information about this, and this is available if you go to Agile Coaching Resources. This is the one that you'll find displayed there. So I've got the URL at the bottom if you want to make a note about that. And so this gives a little more information. There's actually a full article and deeper information on the Agile Coaching Institute about each of these quadrants and about the mastery, the 3 mastery paths you can take. We do want to distinguish between Agile coaching, which is this combination of all of this, and professional coaching, which I've just circled on the screen. And we want to share a little bit more about professional coaching as pulling that piece out and distinguishing between the two. So the International Coaching Federation is an organization that has core competencies and a set of ethics around what it means to be a professional coach. And this is not just Agile coaches, but it's also life coaches, career coaches. A lot of different professional coaching pathways are possible, but the International Coaching Federation seeks to apply some standards of quality for coaching in a professional way. And what you'll start to notice as you dig in deeper to the ICF and the core competencies is there's a lot of similarities to counselors and therapists and psychologists and psychiatrists. So there is some overlap and there's some commonalities there. We definitely want to maintain confidentiality and have explicit agreements and understandings about what the coaching relationship is, and we want to be ethical about it. I think one of the key ways to distinguish between professional coaching and a therapist or a psychologist would be a psychologist or therapist would tend to be more interested in what's the past, asking that why question, asking what was it in your past that has led you to this? And let's just distinguish that from professional coaching. Professional coaching is more interested in the present and the future. So instead of asking why and digging into a coachee's past, we're asking what's possible. Where do you want to go next? We're asking these powerful open questions as professional coaches, and we're listening carefully to find out, where does this person that I'm coaching want to go next? What is their desire? What is their intention? What are their goals? And then helping them move forward, find new possibilities for moving forward. So that's a key distinction. And part of the ethics of the ICF is that if you notice that the person that you're coaching has other needs aside from professional coaching, if you recognize that they may benefit from therapy or counseling, you can suggest that, but you would defer that to those professionals and not take that on yourself. And that applies to professional coaching generally and to an agile coach specifically, that we don't want to take on that work. We want to refer that to other professionals who are skilled specifically in kind of looking at the underlying personal reasons why and their past history. Vikram, do you have anything that you want to add from your experience in agile coaching and professional coaching?
No, well said. I think that covers pretty much everything. I've heard of damage being caused when one side veers into the other, and I think that's something that I'm very cognizant of. And
have you ever experienced it for yourself, where you were coaching someone and you needed you saw an opportunity to refer?
No, not myself. I've heard, I've heard, and because I've heard of it, I'm very cognizant of it. Keep
Yes.
that in my mind all the time.
Yes. I was coaching someone a couple of years ago, and they were having marital problems, and they were experiencing a lot of distress. It was affecting their job. And I recognized very early on that that was outside of my area of expertise. It was outside of my ethical role as an agile coach. So I deferred that and recommended that they seek some additional help, and they did. It happened that it was not just a purely professional relationship. I was also friends with this person, and I've stayed in touch with this person, and they actually got the help that they needed outside. But it really strengthened our relationship but we're both coaches at this point. So it really strengthened our relationship and helped determine the boundaries, so that I was able to stay in touch, and they provided information, but I did not give advice. So it was an interesting situation for me, but it really helped me clarify as an agile coach and a professional coach where those boundaries are, and gave me the opportunity to see that not taking that path and being very explicit about saying, this is outside of the area of coaching, you need to seek other counsel from other professionals, really helped strengthen and clarify that relationship, and generally for me as an agile coach. So before we go to Q&A and open it up for a conversation, Vikram, do you want to take the group through what an agile coach's typical day would be like?
Yeah, so I was asked once, like, hey, what do you coaches do in reality? Like, how does your day look like? And I created this one pager to kind of show an example that, okay, on one hand, while we say that in the coaching stance, if you're holding the coaching or facilitating stance, the agenda is not yours, the agenda is the client's or the coachees. There are other things that you do in the teaching and mentoring stance, right? And here is one way that could show up on a typical day in the life of an agile coach. So in the mornings, maybe you are facilitating some new team that's being stood up. They are having a lift-off session, a kickoff session, where they're all getting to know each other, figuring out their purpose and how they will operate, their ways of working. Same like you could be helping teams with chartering their mission, vision. You could be supporting leadership in organizational change initiatives. A lot of agile coaching is change management. You could be hosting communities of practice, lunches and learns, bean coffees, other vehicles to spread the word per se, help people learn more about agile ways of working. And then maybe after that, after sometimes in the afternoon, you could be doing one-on-one coaching sessions with team members, scrum masters, product owners, leaders. In my current engagement and in my recent engagements, a lot of the afternoon time was spent with one-on-one coaching with leadership teams who are the sponsors of the transformations, helping them understand and figure out what the next steps are. Part of being an agile coach is always upskilling and learning more about the profession. A good way of doing that is joining agile circles, coaching circles, coaching syncs. I think one thing I look back on 2020, and it was a bad year for sure, COVID and everything else. But one thing that it did enable me to do is by means of everything going virtual, I was able to attend coaching syncs and coaching circles outside my time zone, things that wouldn't have been possible before, right? I used to attend a coaching circle on the East Coast because it had opened it up to everyone, right? You could be helping teams understand agility assessments, select appropriate agile metrics. You could be doing trainings. So these are typically things that an agile coach would do on a given day in their coaching assignment. As you'll notice, it's a bit of this, bit of that. It's taking into account the needs of the client and the teams. Sometimes you might be going brand new into an organization that is brand new to agile ways of working. So there'll be a lot more mentoring and teaching going on. But then as the teams get stood up, as the organization matures, the mentoring and teaching might kind of go down, and you might take on more of the true coaching stances. Right. So a part of being an agile coach is knowing when to kind of flip those hats, because I have been in situations where when I was brand new to Scrum and Agile, we were having coaches and some of them read the room basically and put the right stance on. But then there were others who were more of the coaching facilitating stance, and that time the team was hankering for more of mentoring and teaching. So there was that mismatch going on. So I've learned to kind of read that per se, not perfect at it, but that's a key skill. Anything else to add, Craig?
It's definitely a key skill to start to recognize when to bring in a new topic for teaching, or to pause the group and mentor them for a moment, and then to go into coaching conversations. It's so common, even with extended coaching one-on-one relationships that I have, that they start out so often with, how's it going? Everything's going great, no problems. And then asking a couple of new questions, exploring a little bit more deeply, and then that nagging problem that's underneath the surface starts to emerge. And then that becomes an opportunity to recognize, okay, this is an opportunity to do some mentoring, and then recognizing, well, your colleagues you're noticing that your colleagues are experiencing the same challenge here, and maybe they could benefit from that information. And that turns into a workshop that you're teaching for an hour. So each of these 4 quadrants that we shared earlier, they kind of support and complement and reinforce and enable new opportunities. So you kind of do bounce around, and you start to develop this instinct for, this is a teaching moment, or this is a moment for me to not teach and be quiet and instead facilitate subtly for the team to discover a new learning on their own. And you start to develop that instinct over time as you practice as an Agile coach.
Yeah, I think some of the things we talked about here, active listening, trying to understand and let the coachee or the team share more versus kind of taking up the airspace. That's one key skill. The other thing that I learned through my coaching experiences and the classes I went to is the art of asking powerful questions, which are open-ended questions that let the coachee or the person you're talking to explore versus close-ended questions like why, right? So stuff like say more, or if you had a magic wand, what would you do? Stuff like questions like those help kind of open up the conversation, explore versus forcing things into a box per se.
Yes. And a technique like powerful questions is a great gateway technique for someone who does not recognize themselves as an Agile coach or a professional coach. You can still just Google powerful questions, and that's going to bring up lists of questions, and you can start to practice these and start to ask these questions and experiment and find out what happens if I ask a question like, what's next, or what else is possible, or what is the worst thing that could happen with this. And then you start to get exploration and more of that, as opposed to asking a yes or no question like, well, you know what yes or no questions are. So we try and avoid those and be more open-ended in the questions. So just practicing that technique is going to be a good gateway for you to understand what it means to be a professional coach and to facilitate, just by practicing that one technique. And there are many techniques. So we're at 7:30.
Yeah.
Do we want to shift to Q&A?
Yeah, I was just about to suggest that. Thank you for that overview. That was a really effective job of balancing of using good time. So thank you. I've had a lot of practice. I saw some questions come up in the chat. JB had posed one to me though in a private chat. And JB, would you like to come off mute and ask your question to Craig, Vikram, and to the group?
I'll try. Test 1, 2.
Sound good?
Excellent.
I'm good.
All right. So I have been interested from afar in organizations like the International Coaching Federation for a long time, but I haven't really gone into the details of what it means to either learn from or be part of an organization like that. So does ICF offer certification? Are you certified? Do you have, and can you say any, if you are certified, can you share any experience of how that certification has actually, you've seen that it confers either credibility or some other benefit to you beyond merely getting a reading list, reading a bunch of books, talking with a bunch of interesting people, and not being certified?
I can speak to that. And I'm in an interesting point right now. I do not have ICF certification, but I am actively pursuing it. And I have several close colleagues I'm just very close to, very good friends with, who are ICF certified. And being able to ask them questions and learn more about it from their perspective has been valuable. So to answer the question around certification, ICF does offer certification, and there are multiple tiers. One of the main ways that the tiers go from, I think, I'm probably going to get this wrong, but I think there's like a practitioner level, and then there's another level, then there's a master level. And I'm going for kind of the beginner tier, which means that you have to demonstrate at least, I think, 100 hours of coaching. And then the next tier after that, 250 hours, and then 500 hours. And then they also seek for you to provide a recording of your coaching session so that they can evaluate that and see that you're practicing the skills, you're adhering to ethical standards, and demonstrating those core competencies that we shared in the other slide right here. So all of these need to be demonstrated in that coaching conversation. And then they will grant you the certification. You need to continue to maintain it through additional coaching sessions that you keep records of and that sort of thing. So it's very demonstration-based, experience-based. It's not there. I don't believe there's any test or exam. It's more about, can you effectively demonstrate that you can do this work effectively?
Right. So it sounds more like accreditation than certification.
Yes, that's a better word for it, is accreditation. Yes.
And so the people that you trust, I don't want to monopolize the time, but the people that you trust, have they shared with you experiences or have told you specific reasons why they think that this certification helps them, not as a practitioner, but maybe from a sales point of view, or conferring credibility on them, helping them gain trust early in the relationship, that kind of thing?
Yes, I've observed that they present themselves as professional coaches. It's an opportunity for them to speak authoritatively around the ethical considerations and the seriousness of this relationship, and also speak to the value of it that they can provide to the employees of the client, to the leadership of the client. I think a lot of leaders are more open to engaging in a coaching conversation in regular one-on-ones with a professional coach if they know that they're certified, they have that accreditation.
Yeah, I would agree to all that. I know somebody who used to work with us, started on this coaching journey and got so passionate about it that they actually moved away from kind of agile focused coaching to more of executive and life coaching. They started their own practice, and they're like, coaching as a whole, that is a much bigger circle for me than just focusing on agile. So they're like, I don't want to limit myself or kind of focus on agile. So they left consultancy and then started their own firm per se.
Yes, and it's part of the benefit of the generic skills that you learn that enables you to do whatever the client, the person that you're coaching brings into the situation. So if the person you're coaching is bringing in agile topics, then you will coach them on through those agile topics, but they could bring in topics outside of agile, definitely. And
Yep.
I've seen similar things where I've had previous colleagues at Accenture SolutionsIQ, they have gone on and established professional coaching practices as well.
I was catching up with this friend of ours a few months ago, and a lot of their clientele now is athletes and I think nonprofit leaders, nothing to do with Agile.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you, JP, for that great question to kick us off. Brian, you'd posed a question in the chat. Would you like to bring it to Craig and Vikram?
Sure, it's kind of a similar to this particular topic. Beyond going to these organizations, reading books, how would you recommend anybody on the call if they're not coaching now or interested in either learning more about coaching or getting into coaching? What makes sense in terms of next steps with reading books, getting involved in these organizations? How would you maybe recommend, or what advice, what coaching would you give if someone wanted to maybe pursue or look into doing more coaching?
I'm really glad that you asked that question, because as I'm thinking through in my mind the previous answer that I gave, one of the parts of getting the ICF certification that I did not mention, and it's a very significant part, is that you do go through a rigorous cohort. Typically it's called like a cohort or a year-long program that for professional coaching. So you have workshops that you attend, you have in-person practice sessions, and you learn as a small group, typically 10 to 15 people go through a cohort together. And I went through that through the Agile Coaching Institute, and it is about a year, and you spend hours practicing and learning from each other and learning from the facilitators and the coaches who are leading that cohort. And then you have to kind of get a certification that you did successfully complete that. Two of the major certification cohorts that you can go through that the IFC recognizes are coactive, and the other is ORSC, which stands for Organizational Relationship and Systems Coaching. So coactive is biased toward individual one-on-one coaching experiences and skills. ORSC is biased toward small group and multi-person, up to a whole organization coaching. And those are just two very popular, common ones. There are other cohorts that you can go through that may have other specializations or focuses. But again, coactive and ORSC, ORSC.
Yeah, I know somebody who actually used to live in Portland, flew to San Francisco to take part in the coactive training cohort. I think for over a period of a year or something like that. They used to go on alternate weekends or something like that. I don't know exactly why they went to San Francisco, whether it was not available in Portland or something, but I know somebody who did that.
Excellent, thanks. I'm trying to think. I didn't see any additional questions posted.
Just a follow-up to that, maybe.
Yeah, sure.
So when companies, hang a shingle or put some postings out, what are they generally looking for? So, obviously, if you wanted to do coaching on with your own company, you would need, a few years of experience. But if you wanted to get in through a company, like an organization, what do organizations generally look for? Do they look for the certifications, or do they look for people with a background that could work into or grow into a coaching position?
Yeah, it's good. I was going to say that this is probably where I might be a little too honest here, that there is, I think the agile coaching, even I myself, it's got like the imposter syndrome, right? Imposter syndrome. There's this whole thread I was following on LinkedIn the other day where it's self-selective. At this point in time, some people could say that it is self-selective, and I took on the title Agile Coach without necessarily being a coactive or a practitioner, and that I could call myself a sham in that case, right? Because hey, there's no legit Agile coaching certification there. So I haven't yet to come across any company that literally asks for, hey, are you ORSC certified or CTI certified? When I personally look for people to work with, I like to see that. I like to see at least some ICAgile coaching certifications. I like to see some participation in coaching circles or how the person is trying to learn. But yeah, it's kind of depends. And that's where I'm the consultant, I guess. It depends.
Well, that is a topic that my colleagues and I talk about, which is that we look at job postings, and if you go and do a search on Indeed for Agile Coach, I think someone did this recently on a call I was on, and it was like 8,000 or 12,000 openings. And it's likely that the vast majority of those are not looking for professional coaching certification or accreditation. They are just looking for this buzzword of Agile coaching. And there is the opportunity for people to just speak up and say, I am an Agile coach. And it really comes down to, as an individual, how serious are you about this? And I turn the question back to myself and ask myself, how serious am I about this? And the answer I returned for my own self was, I'm very serious about this. And it's because this is the most interesting work that I've come across in my career. This is just really connected with me. It's like, this is the wavelength that I've always been seeking. And so Agile coaching for me personally is something that I'm just driven innately motivated, because this matches who I want to be as a person, who I want to be as as a human being in relation with other human beings. So I can hope that every other Agile coach, person who calls themselves an Agile coach, would have that same motivation and that same desire to continue getting better, to continue learning new skills, deepening those skills, and becoming more and more effective and adhering to the highest ethical standards. We can all hope for that among each other, but the reality is that you can call yourself an Agile coach, and then there's a risk as a client or an employer that if you don't engage with an Agile coach who has this certification level and has demonstrated that they're really serious about it, there's a risk about what you're actually going to get as far as coaching services.
Yeah, and that's where I had a very hard self introspection last year when I was between engagements about where I need to figure out where I wanted to focus. And I was initially looking at getting into CTI or cohort, and that's when I started thinking really hard. And I said, you know what? I love this area of work. I want to focus more on product. So that's where I kind of decided, you know what? Training dollars in my money pocket are limited. I want to grow. I want to grow in Agile coaching, but I want to focus on the business transformation angle of it. So I'm going to, at least for the next year, conferences that I attend, books that I read, coaching circles that I join, I'll focus more on the product mastery versus professional coaching. On the other hand, a fellow coach of mine, they were like, I want to focus more on the professional coaching CTI. So I think they're going to be signing up for either the CTI cohort sometime soon.
There is a middle path. So if you're interested in, for example, ORSC, and I can speak more to ORSC because I have taken some of their classes, but there's a series of 5 classes that you can take. And I believe they even have a standalone single class that you can take. I believe it's called ORSC at Work. And it provides an overview of what ORSC is about, what the skill set is about. So you don't have to sign up for this full year-long cohort. It's fairly expensive, for example. You can sign up for just a single class, which is much more affordable, and it gives you a taste, and it will give you some resources it'll give you a workbook that you can follow up on and continue to practice and refine, and then you can go back and take additional classes. So I want to make sure that we're clear that this is not an all or nothing thing where you're committing to a year.
Good point.
They design it so that you can learn as you're willing and able financially and time-wise to learn more and start to apply things earlier.
Excellent. Thank you. I've got a couple more questions to come in. Kale, you had one if you'd like to come off mute.
Sure. Thanks for having me today. The question is, you kind of covered it a little bit in the last few minutes of conversation, which I appreciate, but balancing this knowledge of expertise in the field, if it's Agile, if it's baseball, whatever the coaching, is, against knowledge and experience in coaching. So you can't teach Agile if you don't know Agile or have experience in it, but you can't do the coaching if you don't have experience in the coaching as well. What is the balance there? And I think that I heard you say it's a lot about just positioning yourself and being confident and having the passion to obtain that knowledge when it's not there. Is that correct? Is there more to it?
Yeah, it's a real balancing act. When I was first introduced to this, it felt overwhelming. So I'm trying to evoke that original feeling I had and imagining that some of you may be experiencing this, that you're looking at this going, wow, how do you juggle like 8 things at once? And it starts to settle in, but it's going to take some time to be able to distinguish between the two. I mean, honestly, there was a time when I was unclear on what's the difference between teaching and mentoring. Am I sure I'm mentoring? Am I really teaching right now? And it was really confusing. So Agile coaching is something that it really asks you to balance a lot of different things and hold a lot of things together at the same time. Professional coaching is something that you can kind of focus on separately from Agile coaching. And I think it has a lot of benefits and skills that you can leverage in your career outside of agility, outside of project management. But the agile and project management, those are the spaces that we all work in. So definitely professional coaching can apply there. So maybe one pathway is to focus on professional coaching, but you could also choose to say, you know what, professional coaching doesn't really sound like that's where my energy is. Instead, my energy is in facilitating. And so you may choose any one of these and start to deepen those. And it's okay to set aside the others for a time and say, you know what, I just want to become a better facilitator. And I'm going to just spend a few months or 6 months or a year and just really deepen that and practice that. So that's my encouragement, is to not feel that you have to swallow this thing whole and somehow hold all of these simultaneously. It can help just to focus on one or the others.
Yeah, JB has the same point in chat. Don't eat the entire elephant. Start bit by bit. Take a small bite.
Yes. For myself, this has kind of been an operating pattern of me throughout my career, is just to go where the energy is. And if the energy is around, like at different times, the three areas of mastery below, there have been times in my career where I've thought, you know, I really need to learn more about technical skills. I don't know enough about BDD, behavior-driven development. And so I'm going to learn a little bit more about what Gherkin is about, and have a developer explain to me what Cucumber is, and Jenkins. And so I'll just sit down and ask questions to learn more. And then 6 months after that, I'll be diving into business mastery again and trying to deepen my skill set around how do you create products that deliver value and do that effectively and efficiently. So it really kind of shifts. And in the intro, it was described that some of my areas of interest right now are really in the transformation mastery area. And I'm feeling at the moment that that's maybe where I'm going to settle, but who knows, 2 years from now, I might be right back into business mastery and technical mastery.
Similar story here. Like I started my career as a software engineer. So when I started learning more about agile coaching and this diagram, technical mastery is what came naturally to me. Mm-hmm. I was like, hey, you know what, this is my area of interest. I used to do this in the past. But then I realized that I used to do it in the past, but I've kind of grown away from it a little. So maybe I need to know just enough and then grow myself in areas where I'm lacking a little, right? So that's when I started focusing more on like business mastery. And as I mentioned earlier, that's where this year I've decided business mastery is where I want to focus on.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. We're getting on towards the end. Matt, you have a question you want to pose? Feel free to come on mute.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Great.
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you both. I was just interested in your relationships with coming into agile transformations. Vikram, you said a lot of this work is change management work. And if you're coming into that sort of space with maybe after a reorg, or the organization itself is new to agile, what are some of the goals that yourself, or maybe it's yourself and a team of coaches, but how do you regularly measure, just some examples of actual measurable goals that you would, be regularly tracking and presenting back to the client to indicate if you're, in your professional coaching opinion, if the change is going well or not?
That's a huge question.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I understand. So if it's just like one or two examples, it doesn't have to,
really good,
Yeah, I'll say this. One thing I've learned not to look or how do I frame this? Let me give an example. I was part of a coaching team at a client once, and they were rolling out a framework, one of the big frameworks. And we used to do surveys like ADCAR, the ProSci based change management surveys, and just get the pulse of the organization. And this was probably like 6 or 7 years ago, but it still sticks in my head. one of the comments was, I'm looking for a new job because of this framework and this stuff that is being done under the Agile umbrella. And I was so hurt kind of that day, because I was like, oh my God, what have we, like, what's going on here, right? We are supposed to help people find better ways of working and find joy in working. And here we have a comment like this. So one part of me was happy that this person felt open in speaking up. But that's when it was like, okay, what to look for? Happiness is one thing I look for sure. Like, okay, if you're rolling out an agile transformation, in the end, are people happy doing the work that they're doing? Are they delivering value? Are the customers or the products or the stuff that they're delivering, are they happy? Is there sustainable pace? Are people getting burnt out at the cost of keeping like customers happy, or like the organization happy? Or vice versa, are people too happy because hey, there's sustainable pace, everything's great, but if you ask the customer, are they getting value, they're like, oh, nah, haven't seen much. So those are things I kind of look for at a very high level, and try to tease those kind of comments out. That are we seeing people leaving for new jobs because of this organization?
Well,
this framework.
For myself, yesterday there was a huge reorganization that was announced at the client I'm at right now. And I've been coaching this client for several months. So yesterday they had a lot of town halls, a lot of all hands meetings. And for myself, my position was, as a professional coach, a lot of active listening, a lot of asking open questions. How is this impacting you? What's going to be different now? And then helping them refocus on what's really important for them and for their organization, and helping them through that process. So yesterday was a really interesting day, and I think it's exactly the question you're asking, is when a company reorganizes, how do we as Agile coaches show up? And sometimes it's just listening and asking questions and being there for them and helping them sift through that dust that's been kicked up, and help them refocus and on what's really important for themselves personally, professionally, and as an organization.
Wonderful. Well, we're getting on towards the top of the hour. I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to transition to whatever comes next. I wanted to thank everybody for attending today. I want to thank everybody who asked questions. I especially want to thank Vikram and Craig for bringing what they brought. I found this to be very enlightening and fascinating. I'd heard some of this before, but I really appreciate the take and the depth that of your experience that you shared with us today. On your way out, please feel free to check out some of the links that we've posted to learn more about Agile PDX and the Portland PMI chapter, what's coming up, and how to get engaged. That's everything for this month. There will be another Agile PM Roundtable next month. I think we're going to do a lean coffee. We don't have a speaker lined up. It's been a little while since we've just had a chance to talk, and hope to see many of you, if not all of you, then.
Right.
Have a great day, everybody. Thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Bye.